In Georgia in 1834, an enslaved man named Elijah saw his master's wife, Eleanor Thornton, crying near the river. What happened next stunned the whole community. The strict rules of the plantation forbid them from even speaking, but her deep sadness touched something in him. The events that followed his choice to walk toward her sent ripples of shock across the county. And nobody could have guessed that this one forbidden act of kindness would start a chain of events that no one, master or slave, could stop. The sun was just coming up over the pine trees. Elijah moved quietly through the mist, heading to the river. Soon, the plantation would wake up for another hard day's work. But this short time, collecting healing plants before the overseer's bell rang, was the only feeling of freedom he ever got. The cool, wet ground under his hardened feet felt good as he walked silently through the bushes, carrying his basket. But he turned a corner, heading for the spot where the best herbs grew, and he stopped dead in his tracks. Sitting on a mossy rock right by the river was Mrs. Eleanor Thornton. She was wearing a costly silk dress, a light blue one she only wore for important guests. It was bunched up around her. Her shoulders were shaking as she cried quietly, a deep, broken kind of crying. Everything he had ever learned, every painful lesson from his childhood, told him to run. An enslaved man seeing a white woman's pain, especially the master's wife, could lead to a whipping or something far worse. People had been killed for less. His heart pounded in his chest. He started to back away, hoping the leaves wouldn't make a sound. But the sad way she was sitting, the way she held a small cloth that was already wet with tears, made him feel something dangerous. It was pity. Maybe he remembered his own mother crying that exact same way when his sister was sold away from them. Or maybe, in that second, she just looked as stuck as he felt all the time. Is something wrong, ma'am?" He spoke before he could think. The words just came out. They hung in the air between them, sounding like a broken rule. Eleanor's head shot up. Her eyes were wide, first with fear, then she saw who it was. A tear ran down her smooth cheek, shining in the new morning sun. For a few seconds, all the rules that separated them felt heavy in the air. Slave and mistress, black and white, owned and owner, and then something amazing happened. She answered him not like a master speaking to a slave, but like a person speaking to another person. "No, Elijah, nothing is right." Her voice was shaky, like a leaf, full of raw sadness. "Nothing has been right for a very long time." That honest answer, spoken next to the river that didn't care about human rules, broke a barrier that was just as deep. In that second, something changed in the ground rules of their lives. They saw each other as human, a thing the whole system of the plantation was built to stop. Elijah moved his feet, the basket of herbs no longer important. He knew he had to go. Every moment he stood there, the danger grew. But he couldn't move. She looked up at him, and it felt like she was really seeing him. "You're collecting healing plants," she said quietly. It wasn't a question, she was stating a fact. "My grandmother taught me about those before." She stopped, and another tear fell. "Before I moved here." Neither of them knew that this short, real conversation had started something that would shake the entire Thornton plantation. They didn't know this one meeting would spread out, changing many lives and bringing both awful, dark times and surprising moments of hope. Elijah had no idea, as he moved a little closer to listen, that this one act of kindness would soon put both of them in terrible danger. He didn't know that by the next week, blood would be shed, a fire would light up the night, and life on the Thornton plantation would be changed forever. The Thornton plantation house looked large and scary against the Georgia sky. Its front, with its tall columns, hid the rottenness that grew inside its walls. 600 acres of cotton fields spread out in all directions. It was a kingdom built on pain and stolen freedom. As Elijah went back to his cabin that night, the picture of Eleanor's sad, tear-covered face stayed with him. He couldn't shake it. What could make the mistress of such a big place feel so hopeless? He thought about it as he ate his small dinner of cornmeal and pork fat. He dreamed about it, seeing Eleanor's blue eyes asking for something he could not name. Morning arrived too quickly. The overseer's bell rang, ending the short time of rest. 3 days went by following the same hard pattern of plantation life, working in the fields from sunrise to sunset, fingers cut and bleeding from picking cotton. The overseer's whip cracked in the air, not hitting him today, but always a threat. Each hour felt like it dragged on forever as Elijah worked. His D was somewhere else, playing back those few dangerous minutes by the river. On the 4th morning, he was cutting firewood behind the kitchen. It was an easier job he sometimes got because he knew about plants and helped in the main house. A shadow crossed his path. Elijah looked up, his axe in the air, and saw Eleanor standing there. She wore a plain dress and her hair was pulled back tightly. She looked calm but very pale. She held a folded piece of paper in her shaking hand. "My husband is gone until dark," she whispered. Her eyes looked around nervously toward the house where other servants might be watching. "There is something I have to show you, something I can't stand to know alone anymore." Every part of him told him not to go with her. Elijah had survived for 32 years by knowing the rules and never, ever breaking them. Being alone with the master's wife wasn't just breaking a rule. It was jumping off a cliff. But he was curious, and he felt something else, something he wouldn't even admit to himself. It pulled him toward her. "It's not safe, ma'am," he said quietly, putting the axe down slowly. "Nothing here is safe," she answered, her voice bitter. "Especially not the truth." They went in through the servant's door. Eleanor led him, moving quietly like someone who was used to hiding in her own house. They climbed a narrow staircase in the back, their feet quiet on the thick carpet from England. Elijah had never been to this part of the house. These were the family's private rooms, a place he was not allowed. His heart was beating so loud he thought it would give them away. In Master Thornton's private room, Eleanor locked the door. The room smelled like tobacco, leather, and wax. Everything in it was expensive, showing off his wealth and power. A painting of Master Thornton hung over the fireplace. His cold eyes looked like they were watching them. "I found these last month," she said. She pulled a thick leather-bound book from under a loose floorboard near the window. "These are Robert's private records, not the ones he shows his partners or the bank." As Elijah looked at the pages she showed him, he felt a cold dread. The book listed business deals that were much more evil than selling cotton or land. It was about people brought in secretly from the coast, even though the government had banned it. It listed names, ages, prices, and profits. Men, women, and even small children listed like items. It got worse. There were notes about terrible punishments for those who fought back or ran away. The notes were cold and exact. Deaths were called accidents or sickness. Families were broken up on purpose to make them lose hope. It even talked about forcing people to have children, written down like they were farm animals. "There's more," Eleanor whispered, her voice shaking as she turned to the last part of the book. There in Master Thornton's neat writing was a list of names. Plantation owners from all over, men who worked for the state, even a judge. There were dates of secret meetings, special codes, and notes of money being passed. It was a secret group that reached far outside the plantation, with spies in the very places that were supposed to uphold the law. "If these men find out I've seen this." Eleanor's words just hung in the air. The unfinished sentence was scarier than any spoken threat. "Why show me this?" Elijah finally asked. It was the question that had been bothering him since he saw her at the river. Why risk all this? Eleanor's eyes met his. They were filled with feelings he had never been allowed to see from a white woman. She was scared, but also determined. She was ashamed, and maybe she had a little hope. "Because I can't stand knowing it alone," she whispered. "And because you—" She stopped, trying to find the right words. "Because I've seen you, the way you look after the others, how you saved Bessie's baby when the doctor refused to come, the plants you pick, the stories the children say you tell. You see people as people." All at once, the doorknob rattled. The handle turned, but the door was locked. A rough voice yelled Eleanor's name from the hall. Heavy footsteps got closer, footsteps they both knew. Master Thornton was back early. They looked at each other, terrified, as a key scraped in the lock from the other side. In that awful second, Eleanor quickly pushed the book back under the floor. Elijah understood a frightening truth. Knowing things was the most dangerous thing you could do, and they knew enough to get them both killed. The door swung open. The study door flew open with so much force that the hinges squeaked. Eleanor's hands froze over the floorboard. The secret book was not all the way hidden under the wood. Her face lost all its color, and her fingers shook like leaves in a storm. Elijah stood perfectly still. He knew if they were caught, it would mean death. Not a fast death, but a slow, painful one meant to be a warning to everyone. But it wasn't Robert Thornton standing there. "Miss Eleanor?" It was Martha, an older house servant who had worked for the family since before Eleanor was married. Keys hung from her tired hands, the main keys for the whole house. Her eyes got big when she saw Elijah in the master's private room. Then she looked at Eleanor, who was kneeling by the window, her fine dress on the floor. "Mr. Thornton's carriage is coming up the path. He's home early and he's in a bad mood. Something went wrong at the bank." For a second, nobody moved. The large clock in the hall ticked very loudly, each tick sounding like a step closer to being caught. Then Martha's eyes saw the book, which was still partly showing. She understood. She didn't say anything, just stepped inside the room and shut the door. The quiet click of the lock felt louder than a slam. "Whatever you are doing, do it fast," she whispered. She helped Eleanor put the floorboard back. Her old, rough fingers worked with Eleanor's thin ones to push the wood back down. "I'll say you are resting with a headache from the heat. Elijah, go get the clean sheets from the East Hall. Act like you are working." The floorboard fit back into place right as they heard the front door slam downstairs. Then they heard Robert Thornton's loud voice demanding a drink and asking for his wife. The sound of his heavy boots on the main stairs made them all jump. "Go," Martha urged. She fixed Eleanor's dress and pinched her cheeks to give them some color. "I didn't see a thing. I've been in this house for 50 years. I know how to see nothing. No reason to stop now." The old woman's eyes had a look in them. It might have been support or it might have been a warning. As Elijah hurried into the hall, grabbing a pile of sheets from a nearby closet, he saw Martha's look. The old woman had seen everything in this house for 50 years. She knew all the secrets. But whose side was she on? Could they trust her to be quiet? Or would she be too scared of the master to keep their secret? Got downstairs using the servants' hallway just as Robert Thornton got to the top floor. He could hear the master angrily asking where his wife was. Outside, the afternoon sun made long shadows on the perfect lawn. The beauty of the place felt like a cruel joke, hiding the pain that kept it running. That night, Elijah couldn't sleep on his thin straw bed. He jumped when he heard a soft scratching sound at his cabin door. He froze, holding his breath. A noise like that at night usually meant trouble. He waited until a small, folded piece of paper was pushed under the door. After he was sure the person was gone, he picked it up with shaking hands. The note was in Eleanor's careful handwriting. It had only 4 words. "The cellar, midnight tomorrow." He threw the note into his small fireplace right away. He watched the paper curl and turn black until it was just ash. Even a tiny piece of proof could get them both killed. The next morning, bad news spread through the plantation. 3 enslaved men had run away from the nearby Wilkes County plantation during the night. Men were gathering dogs from all over the county to hunt them. There were twice as many patrols on all the main roads. It was the worst possible time for secret meetings or dangerous plans. All day, the feeling of fear was as thick as the heat, which made their shirts stick to their backs. The overseers were watching everyone, quick to use their whips for the smallest mistake. Twice, Elijah saw Robert Thornton talking with men he recognized from the secret book. They were powerful men with cold eyes who looked at the workers like they were furniture. "They're scared," whispered Isaiah, an older man working next to Elijah. "When the masters get scared, we're the ones who get hurt. Something is happening, you mark my words." As it got dark the next night, Elijah had to make a choice. If he met Eleanor, he would be risking everything. He had a somewhat safer job as a worker and small bits of freedom he had earned by being careful. Meeting her could cost him his life. But the secrets in that book might be the key to something much bigger than just him. That kind of knowledge could be a weapon if they used it right. From far away, he could hear the sound of the hunting dogs. It was a sound that had always meant terror. The patrols would be watching extra carefully tonight, looking for any movement. The moon was almost full, making it hard to hide. It lit up the plantation in a bright, silvery light, making the shadows sharp and clear. Elijah made up his mind. He waited until the last light was out in the overseer's cabin. He snuck out of his own hut, staying deep in the shadows. He moved with the silence of a man who had learned that being invisible was his best protection. Every step could give him away. Every breath felt too loud in the night. The main house stood in front of him like a pale ghost, its columns shining in the moonlight. The sea. Lardor was around the back, near the kitchen garden where they grew food for the master's table. As he crept past the building where they smoked meat, a dog barked nearby. He froze, his heart pounding. What was waiting for him in that cellar could be his freedom or his end. But he couldn't turn back. Things were already happening. It felt like history itself was holding its breath. He reached for the cellar door, feeling the old wood under his rough fingers. He said a silent prayer. The latch lifted with a small click, and he stepped down into the darkness. Each step took him further away from the life he knew, and closer to a future he could not even imagine. The cellar air was heavy and smelled like dirt, wine, and hidden things. Elijah walked down the old stone steps, trying not to make a sound. The darkness felt thick until he saw a small light ahead. One lantern made long, spooky shadows on the walls. It lit up Eleanor's face as she stepped out from behind some wine barrels. The flickering light made her look like a ghost, haunting the foundation of her husband's power. "You're here," she whispered, sounding relieved. She wore a dark dress and a cap like a servant to hide. Up close, he could see the stress of the last few days in the lines around her eyes. "I wasn't sure you would come." "I needed to know," Elijah said. He stayed near the stairs, ready to run. Trust was something neither of them could afford. "The patrols are out. There are dogs at the edge of the land." Eleanor nodded. "Robert is upset about the escape from the Wilkes plantation. 3 men gone, including a blacksmith he was going to buy. He thinks it was planned. He's right." She looked at the stairs. "Martha is watching for us. She's on our side. She has been in her own way for years. She helped my mother hide runaways in this same cellar 20 years ago. Before my mother died and Robert took over, before it all changed." This news hit Elijah hard. This very plantation had once been a stop on the Underground Railroad. The thought was almost too much. Eleanor pulled a small package from under her shawl. It was the secret book wrapped in a waterproof cloth and something else. It was a folded map, yellow and old. The creases were thin from being opened many times. "Robert is part of something bigger than I knew," she said, spreading the map on a barrel. She held the corners down with small rocks. "These marks show a whole system, secret routes for smuggling, safe places to hide, and contacts in the port cities. He and the others are bringing in hundreds of people illegally every year. The money they make is huge." Elijah looked at the map. His mind was racing as he saw the lines and marks that covered Georgia, South Carolina, and Florida. Some of it was in code, but some of it was horribly clear. Holding pen, 30 people, deep water access, patrol schedule. "These routes," he said slowly, tracing a line that went up the Savannah River. "They could be used for something else." Their eyes met. They were both thinking the same thing. The same paths that brought people into slavery could be used to lead them to freedom. "There's more," Eleanor said, her voice even quieter. She turned to pages in the book that Elijah hadn't seen. "There is a meeting here in 3 nights. All the men from the book, 12 of them including the judge and the sheriff. I heard them talking. They're planning something awful, a big, violent move against the abolitionists in the North. They're afraid that what's happening in the North will spread here." She turned another page, showing a list of names that made Elijah's blood run cold. "These are the people they plan to hurt, people they think support freedom, preachers, newspapermen, even 3 plantation owners they think are too kind to their slaves." Her finger stopped on one name, circled in red. "Including my cousin William in Savannah. He spoke out against the cruelty he has seen." The plan was huge. It wasn't just smuggling. It was a secret group planning to use violence to stop even the idea of freedom. The Thornton Plantation wasn't just a prison. It was the center of something much more evil. A door opening upstairs made them both freeze. They heard heavy footsteps walking on the kitchen floor, a man's walk, not Martha's. "Eleanor," Robert Thornton's voice yelled, full of anger. "Are you down there? Answer me." Right away, Eleanor pushed the map and the book into Elijah's hands. "Take these. There's a loose stone in the small cellar by your cabin. 3rd from the left, near the floor. Martha will find you tomorrow." She pressed something cold and hard into his hand. "My father's compass. If everything goes wrong, find the North Star." The footsteps were coming down the stairs. Eleanor quickly messed up her hair and grabbed an empty wine bottle. Elijah hid behind the big wine barrels, pushing himself into the dark, narrow space between the wood and the damp stone wall. Spiderwebs stuck. To his face as he pushed the papers into his shirt. "There you are." Robert's voice was full of suspicion. "What are you doing down here at this time of night alone?" "I couldn't sleep," Eleanor answered. Her voice changed completely, sounding light and weak like she always did around him. The change was amazing, from a brave planner to a fragile wife in a second. "Dr. Phillips said wine might help my nerves. You know I don't like to bother the servants so late. They work so hard." From his hiding spot, Elijah held his breath as Robert scolded his wife. The master's boots scraped on the stone floor as he walked deeper into the cellar, coming very close to where Elijah was hiding. "You shouldn't be down here alone," Robert said. His voice was a little softer, but still hard. "These are dangerous times, Eleanor. Those men from Wilkes County are still out there. Who knows what they might try?" "You're right, of course, dear," Eleanor said. Her voice shook, but it could have been from fear of being caught or just from her husband's touch as he grabbed her arm. "I wasn't thinking. My headache. Come upstairs. I'll have Martha bring you laudanum." The barrel next to Elijah moved as Robert leaned on it. Elijah pressed himself harder into the shadows. "It's strange, though," Robert said. "I really thought I heard voices." The silence that followed was terrible. Elijah's lungs were burning. "It's just the old house settling," Eleanor finally said. "And the wind in the vents sometimes sounds like whispering. It used to scare me when we first got married, remember? You told me it was just the ghosts of your family watching over us." Robert laughed a low, gruff laugh. "So I did. Come on before you get sick in this damp place." Only when their voices were gone and the door at the top of the stairs shut with a solid thud did Elijah dare to move. He clutched the papers to his chest. He waited 5 long minutes, counting every second before he carefully stepped out. The cellar now felt full of threats. Every shadow looked like it could be hiding someone. Moving with the silence of a man who had spent his life trying not to be seen, Elijah went to the stairs. He stopped on each step, listening. Outside, the night had gotten darker. Clouds were covering the moon. This was good. He needed the darkness. The air smelled like it was about to rain, another small bit of help that might hide the sound of his footsteps. As Elijah crept back toward his cabin, the papers in his shirt felt heavy. They held a truth that could bring down an empire of pain or get him killed in a terrible way. He went around the garden and froze. The back door of the main house opened. A beam of light cut across the grass, then vanished as the door closed. Someone had looked out. Was it for him? He stayed perfectly still behind a large bush. When nothing else happened, he kept going. The slave cabins were a quarter-mile from the main house, close enough to be convenient for the masters, but far enough to pretend they were in different worlds. Tonight, that short distance felt like miles of open, dangerous ground. Behind him, the main house was silent and dark, except for one faint light in the master's study. Ahead of him was danger, fear, and maybe, just maybe, a small spark of something he had never dared to think about: hope. In the distance, a bird called out 3 times. It was a signal that the night patrols were changing. Elijah had 15 minutes to get to his cabin before new eyes were watching. 15 minutes to decide if the risk of fighting back was worse than the certainty of staying a slave. The documents against his skin felt like they were burning. If anyone found them, it meant death, not just for him, but for Eleanor, for Martha, and for anyone else who knew. But they also meant he had a chance. He had leverage, he had a weapon. He slipped through the shadows, moving by memory. The familiar path now felt full of danger. One thought burned in his mind, brighter than his fear. Some secrets were worth dying for, and this one might be worth living for. The first drop of rain hit his face just as he reached his cabin. The storm would wash away his tracks and make the patrols look for shelter. In the small cellar behind his cabin, Elijah felt for the loose stone Eleanor had told him about. His fingers found it. It came loose easily, showing a small, hidden space. It must have been built long ago for this very reason. He put the book, the map, and the compass inside. He wondered how many secrets this plantation had buried and how many were about to be dug up. Thunder rolled across the sky. He went inside his cabin and sat in the dark. Rain pounded on the roof. He would not sleep tonight. His mind was racing with all the things that could happen, good and terrible. In 3 nights, the secret group would meet. He had 3 days to figure out what to do, 3 days to talk to Martha, to learn more, to make a plan. Find the North Star if all else fails, Eleanor had said. Elijah closed his eyes. He pictured the night sky and the star that had guided so many others to freedom. Maybe it would guide him too, not just away from this place, but toward justice. As lightning lit up his small cabin, Elijah made a choice. No matter what happened next, freedom or death, he would no longer just watch. He would be a part of changing things. The morning came, clear and sharp, as it always does after a storm. The air was thick and wet. The slaves walked to the fields, heads down, already bracing for the day's work. The rain had washed the world clean, but nothing had really changed. The same sun would burn them. The same overseers would yell at them. The same cotton plants would cut their fingers. Only Elijah was different. He carried a heavy, dangerous secret as he went to work. The muddy path to the fields pulled at their feet. Raindrops on the cotton plants soaked their thin clothes in minutes. The overseer, Jenkins, was cursing about the mud, which would slow them down. He was in a bad mood, which meant he would be quick with his whip. Elijah got in line, his face a careful, empty mask. His hands started the familiar work of picking cotton, but his mind was busy. He thought about the book, the map, and Eleanor's warning. "You look tired," Isaiah whispered as they worked. The older man's eyes were sharp. At 63, Isaiah had seen it all. He was the plantation's memory, remembering the names and stories everyone else was forced to forget. Trouble or just the storm? Just the storm, Elijah answered quietly, seeing the overseer watch them. Jenkins didn't like Elijah. Elijah could read and build things, which gave him small advantages, and Jenkins hated that. "Thunder always keeps me up." Isaiah's face showed nothing, but his hand briefly touched Elijah's arm. "Martha sent a message. She said to tell you the root vegetables need checking before they spoil." Elijah's heart jumped. Martha did have a plan to reach him, and she trusted Isaiah. The network of secret helpers was bigger than he knew. He wondered how many others were part of it, hiding in plain sight. "Thank you," Elijah whispered, keeping his eyes on his work. "Can't let good food go bad." Isaiah nodded, a tiny movement. "Storms have a way of uncovering what's been buried," he said. His words seemed to be about the cellar, but they felt like they meant more. Some things are just meant to see the light. Before Elijah could say anything, Jenkins rode his horse closer, splattering them with mud. "Less talking, more picking," he barked, hitting his leg with his riding crop. "You're behind already." They went quiet, bowing their heads like they were supposed to. When Jenkins rode on, Isaiah spoke again, his voice so low only Elijah could hear. "Got word from the Wilkes place. Something happened there before the escape, something that's got the white folks more spooked than usual." The day felt like it would never end. The sun got high and hot, burning off the rain and making the air thick and hard to breathe. Elijah's thoughts kept going back to the hidden papers. Around noon, he saw Robert Thornton walking with 2 men from town. One was the banker, Holloway. The other was a plantation owner named Beaumont, a man known for his cruelty. Their talk looked angry. Thornton was waving his arms, pointing back at the house. "Something's got them upset," said Naomi, a young woman working nearby. She was only 20, but her husband and child were on another plantation 10 miles away. She only saw them once a year at Christmas. "That's the second time this week the masters had visitors before lunch. That's not normal." "Keep your head down," Elijah warned her, but he remembered what she said. The meeting Eleanor told him about was already causing problems. "Jenkins is just looking for a reason to use his whip today." Naomi's face didn't change, but her voice was hard. "My grandmother always said, trouble for the masters can mean big danger or big opportunity for us. The trick is knowing which one is coming." Her words hit Elijah. The papers hidden in his cabin were both. They were a huge danger and a huge opportunity. The problem was how to get to the opportunity without getting destroyed by the danger. Later that afternoon, riders came up the road. It was 6 men led by the county sheriff, a tall, bony man named Halt. He was known for being brutal. Jenkins left his post to meet them. Soon, Robert Thornton came out of the house, walking quickly to the group. Work in the field slowed down. Everyone was straining to hear what was being said while their hands kept moving. The sheriff's voice was loud enough to hear. "Found one of them. The other 2 are still missing. We think they crossed the river. Caught this one trying to steal a boat." Thornton's answer was too quiet to hear, but he looked very upset. He led the men into the house. "They're scared," Isaiah whispered. "White folks only look that scared we. And they think we're getting ideas, or when they know we already have them." The rest of the day was quiet and tense. Even Jenkins was subdued. When the bell finally rang, ending the workday, everyone was relieved but also scared. Something bad was building in the main house. As Elijah walked back to his cabin, he tried to act normal, but he was desperate. He had to check on the papers. He had to find Martha. He had to get answers. His cabin was a little separate from the others. He had built it himself. It was a small privilege that usually made him feel alone. But tonight, he was glad to be by himself. Martha was waiting for him, sitting by his door with a basket of mending. It was a normal sight, so no one would be suspicious. Her old fingers worked on patching a shirt as she spoke, her voice just a whisper. "They moved the meeting. It's tomorrow night now, not in 3 days. The sheriff brought news that scared them." Her needle moved in and out of the cloth. Her hands were shaking. "They caught one of the men from Wilkes County. Before they killed him," he said something that scared them bad. "What?" Elijah asked. His throat was dry. Martha's eyes, old but sharp, met his. He told them it wasn't just a random escape. He said there's a network, growing. He said even house slaves and trusted workers are part of it. He said the day of reckoning is coming. She leaned closer. He told them they had friends they never suspected, even among the white folks. The news was heavy. They believed him enough to hang him fast before anyone else could hear him, enough to move their meeting up, enough to double the patrols again. She put her sewing down. "They are planning something terrible, Elijah, not just more guards." Eleanor heard Robert talking. He said they need to make examples and cut out the cancer before it spreads. Elijah felt a cold chill. "Mass punishments, public killings." Martha nodded. "For anyone they even think is a sympathizer, they're talking about bringing in slave breakers from Charleston, men who are experts at crushing resistance." Her old, rough fingers grabbed his arm. "And that's not the worst. They plan to sell families, separate children from their mothers. Send anyone they call a troublemaker to the Deep South, to Louisiana, where most people don't survive a year." "Eleanor says we have until tomorrow night to do something," Martha said. Her voice was urgent. "After that, it will be too late. Those papers you have, they're not just about smuggling. They are proof of everything. Their money, their bribes, all the names and dates. It's enough to ruin all of them if it gets to the right people." "Do what?" Elijah asked. The situation felt impossible. "What can we do against 12 powerful men, including the sheriff, who will believe us?" Martha's smile was small but strong. "We do what slaves have always done. We use their own blindness against them." She got closer. "Eleanor has a plan. Tonight, after the house is quiet, come to the kitchen door. Knock 3 times, wait, then knock 2 more times." "What is her plan?" Elijah asked. "There's a man coming tomorrow from Savannah. It's Eleanor's cousin, William, the one on their list. He's a target. He doesn't know he's walking into a trap. She sent him a message warning him to bring help." "What kind of help?" Martha's eyes shined with a fierce light. "The kind of help that carries a printing press instead of a whip. The kind that writes for newspapers in the North about how evil this all is. The kind of men who would be very, very interested in papers that prove illegal slave trading and a secret, violent group of rich men." The plan was incredibly bold. It took Elijah's breath away. "Abolitionists? Here. William has friends. He does business in Boston and New York. That's why he's on their list." She stood up, her joints cracking. Eleanor thinks if we can get the papers to these men before the meeting, they can take them north right away. If they publish them, it will destroy Thornton and his friends. It could save all those lives. Martha picked up her basket. Bring the papers and be ready. After tonight, nothing will be the same. Elijah was alone. He pulled the stone away and took out the papers. He looked at them in the last light of the day. The names, the routes, the list of enemies, it was all there. It was a map of their cruelty, but it was also a map to their destruction. He traced the lines on the map. Each mark, each note stood for hundreds of lives ruined for money. Outside, the first stars came out. Somewhere north, two men were still running, still hoping for freedom. In the big house, Eleanor was getting ready to betray her entire world, and in the cabins, people like Isaiah and Naomi were holding on to a quiet strength. Elijah put the papers back carefully. Tomorrow, William would arrive. Tomorrow, they would meet in the orchard shed. Tomorrow, they would try to pass the Eve. Idents to the outside world. Tomorrow could bring freedom or it could bring death. He lay on his bed in the dark. Sleep was impossible. Through his window, the North Star was bright and steady. Find the North Star, Eleanor had said. He put her compass with the papers. He made a promise. Whatever happened, he would get the truth out. He would expose them. And maybe, just maybe, that would be the first light of a new day. The main house was a dark shape against the starry sky. Elijah moved through the shadows of the orchard, using the trees for cover until he was in the kitchen garden. The back of the house was plain, not like the grand front. This was where the real work happened. The kitchen door was open, just a crack. A tiny line of light came from inside. He knocked. 3 taps, a pause, then 2 more. The sound felt as loud as a drum. The door opened and Martha pulled him in. "Quickly," she whispered, shutting the door. The kitchen was dark except for one candle hidden behind a pot. "Eleanor is in the study," Martha said. She led him through the kitchen and down a narrow hall. "Master Robert is asleep. He took laudanum for his pain. The other servants are in bed." Elijah followed her through the dark, silent house. He had almost never been in this part. They passed the formal dining room where the silver shined in the dark. Martha opened a door and they were in the study. Eleanor was standing by the window. She looked pale and tense. "You came," she said, relieved. "I was afraid after last night." "I brought the papers," Elijah said. He pulled the bundle from his shirt. Eleanor spread the map and the book on the desk. "This is worse than I thought," she whispered. 12 plantations, 4 judges, the sheriff, 2 state lawmakers, even a congressman. All of them. "What is the plan?" Elijah asked, his voice low. "Martha mentioned your cousin." Eleanor nodded. "William arrives tomorrow. He thinks it's a social visit. He doesn't know Robert and his friends have marked him as an enemy. They plan to deal with him. Stage an accident, probably. Robert is good at that." Her voice was full of hate for her husband. "But William isn't coming alone. I sent him a letter warning him to bring his friend from Boston, a man named Phillips. He writes for newspapers in the North that are against slavery." Martha, who was watching the door, spoke up. "If those men can get these papers to Boston or New York and print them in the news, it would cause a huge scandal. It would be impossible for them to cover it up." Eleanor's eyes met Elijah's. "But we have to give the papers to William without Robert finding out. He will be watching William from the moment he gets here." "So what do you?" Elijah started to ask, but a sound from upstairs cut him off. A floorboard creaked. A door opened. All 3 of them froze, looking up at the ceiling. "Robert," Eleanor whispered, her face going pale. "He must have woken up." Martha moved fast. She grabbed the papers and pushed them back at Elijah. "The root cellar," she hissed. "Go now, use the South Garden path. The patrol won't be there for another 20 minutes. Elijah looked at Eleanor. "Tomorrow, the old shed by the orchard, at noon," she said quickly. She straightened up, suddenly becoming the mistress of the plantation again. "Go," Martha pushed him back through the dining room. They heard footsteps coming down the main stairs. They had just reached the servants' hall when Robert Thornton's voice called out, "Eleanor, is someone down there?" Elijah saw Eleanor walk toward the study door, her voice sounding perfectly calm and sleepy. "Robert, dear, is your gout bothering you again?" Then Martha shut the passage door and they were rushing back to the kitchen in the dark. The papers in Elijah's shirt felt like they were on fire. They got to the kitchen just as a bell rang from the main house. The master was calling for a servant. Martha's face got tight. "He's calling for me," she whispered. "Go, be careful, remember orchard shed, noon tomorrow." She squeezed his hand. "More than just our lives depend on this." The night air felt cold as Elijah slipped out the door. The moon was high now, making it harder to hide. He raced back to his cabin, his mind spinning. The plan was crazy. They had to get the papers to a man who was walking into a trap. Then that man had to escape, carrying evidence that could destroy the most powerful men in the state. And after that, what would happen to Eleanor, to Martha, to him? For the first time in his life, Elijah felt a real, sharp feeling of hope. It was mixed with a terrible, paralyzing fear. The slave quarters were dark and quiet. He checked for the patrol, saw no one, and ran to his cabin. He locked the door and slid to the floor, breathing hard. The plan was bigger than he was. It was bigger than all of them. Yet here it was. This small group, a carpenter, an old house servant, a trapped wife, a merchant, and a writer, was going to try to tear down a system built on generations of pain. The danger was huge. If they failed, the cost would be unthinkable. He hid the documents under the stone again. Tomorrow, William would arrive. Tomorrow, they would meet in the shed. Tomorrow would decide everything. He lay on his bed, but he didn't sleep. He just watched the North Star through his small window, bright and steady, pointing the way.